Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns to talk about after that win against the Bengals down in Cincinnati. Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast will join us a little bit later in the show. And we begin with some news out of Berea. Greedy Williams day-to-day with the shoulder injury that forced him out of the game. Same shoulder that caused him to miss all of last week. No updates on either Kareem Hunt or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on the injured list. Their time there means they could potentially come off this week, but the injuries were thought to be a little bit more severe. But we'll get an update about that coming up on Wednesday when Kevin Stefanski meets with the media. Kevin Stefanski met with the media today, talked about the win against the Bengals that gets the Browns to 1-1 in the AFC North.
I thought it was a good team win, played some complimentary ball. Finished +3 in the turnover margin, which is really what we're looking to do. So it was good effort, good individual efforts by a bunch of the guys, and we're going to make some corrections today, and then we'll be have to go full speed ahead on to New England.
Let's welcome in Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Dan, some takeaways from that win that was much needed by the Browns to get to 5-4 on the year.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, they needed to win that game because their season was sort of teetering a little bit. You were 500. You had just lost to a Steelers team that you should have beaten. You know, really one of your worst performances of the year when you lose 15-10, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So to go to Cincinnati and just absolutely dominate that game and offensively look like the 2020 Browns again, run the football, and then to have the defense play like they did. I mean, it was – I don't know if season saving is too dramatic, but if you're 4-5 right now and about to head to Foxborough, that's a tough place to be. You've essentially guaranteed yourself now, you know, no matter what happens in New England, right? You're going to turn around and beat the Lions, or at least you should. So you've kind of guaranteed yourself to be 6-5 heading into those final, 6 games of the season, starting with Baltimore.
You also look at it, and, the AFC is kind of all jumbled up. The Bills lost to the Jaguars. So, the Browns at 5-4 are kind of right in the middle of the pack. Chiefs are there with them. The Patriots, who the Browns play, are right there with them as well. So there is no clearly defined leader, if you will, in the AFC to this point of the season.
There really isn't. And you've got Tennessee, who won on Sunday night against the Rams. They're leading the way at 7-2. But how sustainable is it going to be for them without Derrick Henry? Can they continue to play like they did Sunday night, or are they going to fall apart a little bit? New England right now is 7th by way of tiebreakers. They're 7th in the AFC. So the Browns get to play them this week. And that's the great thing about the way this schedule is set up for them. They play the teams that they've got to beat to get into the playoffs. They've got 2 against Baltimore, another one against Pittsburgh. They've got Cincinnati again, who they're ahead of now. And they've got the Patriots and Raiders. So all of those teams are teams that they're fighting for playoff positioning with. So they, even though they're technically on the outside looking in, they pretty much control their own destiny right now.
The other thing is the way that game started out with the Bengals putting together a drive. I believe it was on the 12th play of that drive was Denzel Ward's interception. Were you starting to go, oh no, here we go, when you see the Bengals kind of moving down the field pretty methodically to start that game?
Yeah, it was not the way you wanted to start the football game by any means. I mean, the Bengals were doing whatever they wanted on the ground, through the air. Joe Burrow looked like he was really sharp. And then even when the Browns kind of get that stop, right? Myles Garrett gets the 3rd down sack, but Malik McDowell is lined up in the neutral zone. So you just kind of roll your eyes and you're like, okay, here we go again. So Denzel Ward steps up and makes the play. It's actually interesting. The Bengals did the same thing last year. They put together a long drive to start the game, and B.J. Goodson intercepted Joe Burrow in the end zone. Now, it didn't quite go that way. It ended up being a shootout last year, but it's interesting that both those games kind of started the same way. But yeah, those first 2 drives by the Bengals, even with the pick 6, it made you a little bit uncomfortable. But then this defense just completely put the clamps on Joe Burrow.
The other thing that showed up again was the run game in a big way. Nick Chubb had that 70-yard touchdown run. Kevin Stefanski talked about just having 2 guys in Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio at guards that can get out, pull, and lead the way. Here's Kevin Stefanski on Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty rare to have 2 guys that can do that and can be put in space and still be physical players. I thought Wyatt was very, very physical yesterday, finishing with guys on the ground. Joel was his typical self as well. But those guys, they did a real nice job. The whole offensive line did a really nice job. Obviously, Nick makes some great plays because he's a great player. But those guys, I thought, were playing very well together up front.
And when the Browns are able to do that, it kind of sets everything else up for them.
Yeah, and that to me is why when I watched this game, I just thought, oh boy, this feels like I said earlier, the 2020 Browns, because it was all based on Nick Chubb and getting that run game going. And Baker was so efficient. And you look at that final stat line, it doesn't blow you away. Obviously, he made a couple really nice throws, but he was just really efficient and gave this team what they needed, didn't turn the football over. And you just hand the ball off to Nick Chubb. He breaks that huge run that essentially puts the game away. We've seen this team blow leads in second halves of games, and that combined with the defense meant that it didn't happen this week. Wyatt Teller, everybody sees the clips on Twitter. They see the photos, the still photos of him just laying people out. But Joel Bitonio, always kind of the forgotten guy in that group because he's just so steady, and I think he's the best offensive lineman on this team. So having those two guys, I mean, they're as big a weapons as Nick Chubb, honestly.
So Baker Mayfield post-game yesterday talked about, one, how important it was to get that win and how critical it was. And two, Odell and the whole situation with this team moving past him. Here's Baker Mayfield.
I wish him well. I really do. Like I said, my feelings haven't changed. I wish him well. That's from a personal standpoint. He's a good friend of mine. We still haven't talked, but that doesn't change things. I wish him well. I wish him the best in his career, but I'm worried about the guys in our locker room. I'm proud of these guys, how they were able to focus up despite all the that was going on this week, and how they were able to do their job. So that's why I appreciate this group of guys and the staff that we have. So we're going to see if we can build on it and continue to get better. That was an important game for us. Any division game is important, and we were sitting at 4-4, and we needed that win, and our whole locker room needed that, and they knew that. So they played for each other, and any kind of win feels good.
How do you feel, though, that you guys put aside all the distractions? I mean, is this the most focus you've seen from these guys?
Nah, it's just the type of team we have. That's the kind of things I keep hitting on. I trust the guys in this locker room. I've said it over and over again, and I truly mean it. So when adversity hits, nobody flinched. It was a long week. I'd be lying if I said otherwise, but proud of these guys and how they were able to focus and do their jobs. It's just, we got a good group. We really do.
And Dan, it's really interesting because if you think back, some of the wins that have been the most important have been, under adversity. The Broncos win on Thursday when all those guys were out. You go back to last year. Kevin Stefanski can't coach. They find a way to win a playoff game. I mean, every time you throw a hurdle in front of the team under Kevin Stefanski, they seem to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking yesterday, how would this last week played out with any number of former Browns coaches, whether it's Freddie Kitchens or Greg Williams, Hugh Jackson. I mean, that's only going back 4 years. You can throw out any number of names. And I just think it would have been a circus. I think it would have been a distraction. And under Kevin Stefanski, he comes out on Wednesday when all of this is brewing and everybody's going to ask about Odell. And he knows the whole press conference is going to be about Odell. And he says, we're desperate. We need to play this game like our lives depend on it. And to me, for him to say that publicly, which he never does, to say that publicly, I think sent a message to the team, focus on this football game. And, you mentioned all those different times, even the game that he couldn't coach, and Mike Prefer was on the sideline running things. That's a Kevin Stefanski win because he had that team prepared. He had that team ready to play and know exactly what they were going to do without him. To me, this week was one of the most impressive performances by Kevin Stefanski because this team just shut out all the noise. He always likes to say this, they were all about ball, and they showed up on Sunday, and they didn't just beat the Bengals. I mean, they just blew the doors off the Bengals.
And again, they shut down a really good offensive football team. So the question becomes, where does Odell Beckham Jr. land? And we won't know for 24 hours. It's on waivers. We'll find out coming up tomorrow afternoon, so we potentially won't know until our show on Wednesday. One place that you could potentially end up, possibly, would be Detroit. The Browns do play the Lions in a couple of weeks. So are the Lions looking at Odell Beckham Jr.?
Will you guys be in the market for Odell Beckham? No.
No. Okay.
And that sounds kind of like a hard pass to me on the. So I don't think we'll be seeing Odell in 2 weeks.
No, probably not. And, it's no surprise. A team like the Lions or the Jets, some of these other teams at the top of the waiver wire, or the Jaguars, all of those teams, they're not looking to add a guy like Odell Beckham. We can make all the jokes we want to about whether Odell's a winning player or not. But the reality is, if you're trying to lose football games and get draft position, you don't want to add a player like Odell Beckham to the mix, most likely. So I would rule out anybody at the top of that waiver order. Although, the John Dorsey factor is there in Detroit. So that was maybe why it was something to keep an eye on. But, as far as waivers go, Seattle might be the wild card in all this. I think they were 9th coming into this week in waiver order, and they're a team that has made claims before like this. And, Browns fans might remember them going after Josh. They added Josh Gordon at one point. They're never afraid to kind of take a chance like that. But I'm not sure who really is going to put in a claim for Beckham as opposed to waiting for him to just hit the market.
Yeah, fair enough. The other thing is the Seahawks do have enough room to get him under the cap as well, under the cap. All right, Dan, Labbe, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. So the question that everybody's kind of dealing with, are the Browns better without Odell Beckham Jr.? We'll hear Dan Orlovsky weigh in on that. Plus, Baker Mayfield, one of the best games of the year at quarterback, according to Pro Football Focus. That and more straight ahead when Sports for CLE continues. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns, wrapping up what has been their most impressive win of the year over the Bengals yesterday. So Dan Orlovsky addressing the topic, are the Browns better without Baker Mayfield, or with Baker Mayfield at quarterback without Odell Beckham Jr. on the team? Here's Dan Orlovsky from Get Up on ESPN.
This was the Browns team that I expected to see this offseason. This is the quarterback that I expected to see this season. The reality is Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback without OBJ. Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, is a better coach without a star receiver. Now, that is not a knock on OBJ, but the Baker Mayfield sucks crowd had a tough weekend because the kid played fantastic football. He only had one missed throw. That was to Landry late in the game. Outside of that, he was phenomenal with his ball location. He was phenomenal with his decision-making. There's a saying in football, players over plays. You didn't hire Kevin Stefanski for that. You hired Kevin Stefanski for his offense that he learned from Gary Kubiak and Mike Shanahan. It's not about the premier players. It's about building a scheme and the quarterback then figuring out, given what the defense is, who I should throw the football to. That's the Baker Mayfield that I saw yesterday. That's the Baker Mayfield that can be a reason why the Browns win a Super Bowl.
Dan Labbe, I can't argue with that. You know, it's a head scratcher because I think Odell Beckham's a good football player, but I think Baker Mayfield in the offense is better without him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn because, I think all offseason leading up to this season, I thought, okay, this is going to work fine. They're going to get it figured out. And I didn't believe that this team and this quarterback were better without Odell Beckham Jr. But at one point last week, I asked somebody, is there any hard evidence that this team actually is better with Odell on the field? And you just can't find it. It was all sort of in theory. Now, am I going to use this one game here as a measuring stick that, okay, the Browns are definitely going to be better off without Odell? No, but at the same time, you look at the back half of last year, you look at some other instances when he wasn't around and how Baker played, it sure seems like it's pointing that way. And if this trend continues, I think some of them, myself included, we're going to look back and say, you know what, I was wrong. They needed to move on from Odell before they did, because it's pretty clear that those numbers, those stats that we all saw get tweeted out or wherever we saw them, Baker with Odell and Baker without, those things were telling us something.
Yeah, and you can't dispute the way they went out and played against the Bengals. All right, this one we're going to look at a little bit of fun. The Baker cycle. So play like, yeah, shit, and then criticized by the media, underdog mentality, beat an inferior opponent, call out doubters, and then the cycle repeats and repeats. But now the inferior opponent, we're starting to move that up a couple of notches. So we need to also kind of speed up the cycle as well. We might have to put 2 or 3 of those together so that we get out the play increases for every Sunday. So we have to figure a way to speed up the Baker Mayfield cycle.
Yeah, man, maybe just take that top one out so we don't have to deal with any of those games from Baker as well. I mean, look, I don't know if Cincinnati is legitimately a contender to win the AFC North, but this was a big game against a team that was ahead of the Browns. There's no debating that. Joe Burrow and the Bengals are a good offense. They added a lot of defensive pieces. I think they're a good team, maybe playing a little above their heads, maybe a little ahead of schedule right now if they continue on this pace. But this was a good win on Sunday to go on the road, especially with the way the Browns had been playing, and they were in a little mini slide. So to go on the road and beat the Bengals like they did, it really does mean something. And now you get to go to New England and play a team that is better than the Bengals, but is also still a little flawed, and a team that the Browns should, I would think, be able to beat. But this is just another huge AFC matchup. The Patriots are as well-coached a team as we know. Mac Jones is playing well. Their defense is excellent. This is another great test for this football team and a chance for Baker Mayfield to maybe remove that play inferior opponent bubble out of that cycle as well.
And the one thing I'll say, they are well-coached without question, but they don't have the type of offensive players that the Bengals had that you kind of go, ooh, if this guy has a huge, you know what I mean? And they're good, don't get me wrong. You've got Hunter Henry, you've got, Damian Harris, but there's nobody like Jamar Chase or even T. Higgins where you go, man, how are you going to stop him with the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, they're almost like the poor man's Browns on offense in some areas. Like they have good running backs, but they aren't as good as the Browns backs. And obviously, Kareem Hunt, we don't know his status yet, but even if it's just Nick Chubb, they have a good offensive line, or at least they want to have a good offensive line, but it's not as good as the Browns. Even their weapons on the outside, neither team has incredible weapons on the outside necessarily, but the Browns guys are still better. Maybe the Patriots have better tight ends, but the Browns guys are fine. I think offensively, when you look at that Patriots team, there's some similarities to this Browns offense, but I think what they have talent-wise kind of across the board is a step below what the Browns have.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, ESPN.com, and they do this as overreaction or not an overreaction. And for this week, the Browns are better without Odell Beckham, and they say it is not a overreaction. And they're saying, it's beyond one game sample. You look at the QBR ratings that they use, and you see the number, and it says it's right in line with the larger sample size. So what we have been talking about, there are some of the quantitative data that goes into saying the Browns are, in fact, better without Odell Beckham Jr., which, again, you have a tough time getting your head around it, but everything else tells you, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we thought this offense could be with Odell, again, it was just all in theory. There was nothing to back it up. Every hard piece of evidence you had was the stuff they cited in that paragraph. The stats were just saying Baker plays better. I thought Dan Orlovsky actually made a great point on that clip we showed earlier. Kevin Stefanski maybe even coaches better without Odell Beckham Jr. He doesn't necessarily tailor his offense to star players on the outside like that. We saw it with Stephon Diggs as well, and then he ended up in Buffalo. So I think the Browns learned a lesson here with Odell Beckham Jr. And, again, a lot of us thought maybe this thing would start working, and it just never did. And for him to, essentially get released before this game, and for them to play so well and for Baker to play one of his best games of the year, it's just another piece of evidence that saying this team is better off without Odell is not an overreaction.
The other thing is, and you mentioned Baker Mayfield and the way he played. So let's put some qualitative analysis behind it. Here's the Pro Football Focus grade from yesterday for Baker Mayfield. 89.8, highest among quarterbacks heading into Monday night. And it's also one of the highest in the season to date. It's like 8th, 7th or 8th, something along those lines. So that's how good he played from an analytics standpoint in that game against the Bengals. We all saw it with our eyes. There's the X's and O's grading of it.
Yeah, and there were some instances maybe he took a sack or two he shouldn't have taken, and it wasn't a perfect game by any means, but for him to be as efficient as he was, and while the stat line doesn't blow you away, he hits Donovan Peoples-Jones on 2 really great throws, and that second throw to Peoples-Jones was as good a throw as he's made in a Browns uniform. The throw to Njoku at the end of the game was a great throw. It was just a really efficient game from Baker Mayfield. And I think ideally this is the sort of thing you want. You don't want Baker going out and throwing 40 times every week. There may be some games where it's necessary, but you want the offense to look like it did on Sunday, like it did in 2020, when you're able to run the football, use play action. Baker actually was really good in the pocket yesterday. I didn't think he was relying on rollouts or anything like that. It was just a really efficient, well-played game from Baker.
Yeah, and you know what? The moments where he needed to be very good, he was very good in, which is all you can ask from him. All right, so current NFL award favorites by Spotrac, and Myles Garrett is now the odds-on favorite to win the Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, Josh Allen. Ooh. That didn't age well from yesterday, though. Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year. You see the Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year, as well as the Comeback and Coach of the Year. But hard to argue with Myles Garrett being a leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year when you look at the 9 weeks that he's put together.
He's having an incredible season, and yesterday was just another example of the type of player he can be. I mean, the only thing he hasn't done this year is kind of pick up where he left off last year when it came to strip sacks and plays like that. But, PFF has him near the top of the league in pressures. He's obviously leading the league in sacks, and I think this is only going to continue to grow because this team is going to be more and more in the spotlight, starting with that Sunday night game in Baltimore, Thanksgiving weekend. Myles Garrett making plays in the spotlight in big games. That's what ultimately wins you Defensive Player of the Year. When you have Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth talking about how good you are, and you're making plays on a national stage. And so that's going to be sort of Myles' chance to really make his case. The numbers are there. And then if he can make some splash plays in big games and that everyone is watching, that's how you win Defensive Player of the Year.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we continue to talk defense. How about the job the Browns secondary did against the Bengals offense? We'll dive into that when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Browns coming off their most impressive performance of the year in that win over Cincinnati, now 5-4 on the year. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, this year I would classify the Browns as a Jekyll and Hyde team. Yesterday was the team as we as fans had hoped for, a team when mostly healthy, coming out and playing dominant football. When you eliminate any inside trouble and all are on one page playing for the ultimate goal of team first instead of individual goals, victories are won. One thing we must eliminate is penalties. too many what I call dumb self-inflicted penalties, which take away positive yards and stop drives. Big decisions the team must make. Denzel Ward, when healthy, is a superstar, and Wyatt Teller is a dominant player we must keep and play. This team has put itself in a position of must-win every week. If we come out with the attitude we played with yesterday, I believe our odds are pretty good for the rest of the season.
And Dan Labbe, it's a very interesting thing, and it has been a wild swing, a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing for the Browns. But a lot of new faces on the defense. Let's see how that progresses.
Yeah, and yesterday was a great step forward for this defense, especially the secondary, because all those weapons, they really did a great job on Jamar Chase, especially early in the game. And I think it affected Jamar when he had those 2 drops in the second half. I mean, he was covered pretty tightly on both of those plays. So they did a great job in that game. And it was really encouraging because we're not that far removed from Mike Williams running free in the secondary or DeAndre Hopkins running open. That was really what I was concerned about going into yesterday's game, more so than all the Odell drama and all that. I was worried about the miscommunications and the issues they've had in that secondary. And Denzel Ward set a tone with that pick 6. And that was an incredible defensive performance from this football team, starting with all of those guys. Troy Hill, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome was really good. John Johnson has sort of become the player that I think the Browns envisioned him being for this defense. That's what takes this team from being borderline playoff team to a team that can go and win the AFC.
Yeah, and so Tim Hasselbeck on ESPN, and there were a couple of other national folks, said that was the best, or one of, if not the best, performances the secondary has had all season across the league. You and I watch mostly the Browns games, so we can't really say that, but I'll take their word for it because that is a talented wide receiving group that the Browns really minimized. Kevin Stefanski talked about the job that his secondary did against the Bengals.
Yeah, they were really good, Scott. And I just thought, obviously, Denzel's play is, that's a game changer to go 99 when it looks like they're about to score. But I think throughout the game, you really saw our guys making plays on the ball. Those contested catches. I even think back to their first 3rd down that they got a conversion. Troy Hill is right there. He slipped coming out of his break, but he still contested the catch, and their player made a great play. But for our guys to be sticky in coverage, and then when the ball's in the air to go make a play on the ball, I think that was just great to see. I think it was great to have Greg and Denzel out there together. AJ Green got in there, was productive. Obviously, Greedy was in there just for a minute before getting injured. So that's the corners. Then think about the safeties. I mean, John Johnson just doing a great job getting the ball out, putting his helmet on the ball, and then Denzel getting a PBU that pops into JJ's hands. So I did think it was a great performance by that group.
And again, it's Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is another different guy. Boyd underneath. Their tight end Uzama has been good. Mixon is good out of the backfield. There are a lot of things to deal with, and the Browns, they held them to 16 points, really 10 when the game was hotly contested.
I think the big takeaway from this game is this. You look at all those athletes, right? You've mentioned all of those names, guys that can run, guys that can make big plays in the passing game. And the Browns were able to kind of hang with all of them. And that's how this defense is built. They're built to be really fast. They're built to be as athletic as that receiving core across from them. And to see the way they play now, if they can continue to build on that as they go against, a team like the Ravens, when they're going to have to find a way to stop Lamar Jackson. And they've got some athletes too on the outside. They've done a nice job of adding some receivers to that group. Not quite what the Bengals have, but it's still a good group. The Steelers have good receivers, even if their quarterback has trouble getting them the football. This is how this team is built defensively. They want to be fast. They want to be athletic. And I thought we saw that really for the first time, at 100% on Sunday.
Well, the other thing is everybody knows, again, how well Denzel Ward played. Here's let's put some numbers to it, again, from Pro Football Focus. 1 catch allowed for 11 yards, a pick 6, and a 0.0 passer rating when targeted. And again, we're talking about the guy that was covering who is likely to be the rookie of the year offensively in the NFL in Jamar Chase. And I'll tell you what, Greg Newsome, the rookie, was pretty good in coverage as well.
Yeah, I liked that yesterday, how they sort of mixed it up a little. Denzel was on Jamar Chase a lot, but you saw Greg Newsome on him too. I thought that was an interesting move by Joe Woods and Jeff Howard to sort of mix and match a little bit and not have Denzel follow him. But Denzel had that breakup too, that John Johnson ends up coming down with the football. This was the type of game when you watch Denzel Ward and you think, okay, this is the guy you want to give $80 million to or $90 million to, whatever that number is going to be. I think Denzel has been very good in his career, but a game like this, like almost a transcendent game, is the game when you remember, like, okay, this guy can really be a star. He's got that type of potential.
Yeah, and again, you want to see him on the field all the time. You know, the only question that you have is, can he stay on the field? Well, another guy that pay attention to, Troy Hill, does a little bit of everything and does does everything well. But the Browns use him in so many different ways. He is really an underrated free agent acquisition that the Browns had. He has done a lot of things. Here's Kevin Stefanski on the game Troy Hill played.
I think Troy does a really nice job. I mentioned it yesterday. He's really good in his run fits. I think he's a good blitzer, plays sticky in coverage. He's very, very competitive, very, very tough. I enjoy being around him. I think his teammates enjoy being around him. He just brings an edge to that group.
And Dan, he tackles well. He comes in on the run. You just look up and it's like, man, that's Troy Hill again.
And he's not big.
Yeah, no.
When you see him, you walk by him, you stand near him when he's doing interviews, whatever it is, you wonder how he can hold up taking these hits. But this is a guy that's a veteran. He's been doing it for years. That was actually sort of a little mini revenge game for Troy, who started, I believe he started his career in Cincinnati before he ended up with the Rams. This was the Troy Hill they envisioned. It's something Andrew Berry has done so well in his time as GM, is fill in the blanks. He inherited a very talented roster, but it was a far from complete roster. So you saw him fill in the blanks on offense to fit what they wanted to do. And this year he filled in the blanks on defense, and Troy Hill was a big piece of that. Find a guy that can be physical and tough as a cornerback, that's not going to be afraid to poke his head in the backfield and make plays, go after the quarterback, make plays in the run game, and be a physical player on the outside. That nickel position is so specialized, and those guys don't make the money the outside corners do. But I think that position is as valuable as it's ever been in the NFL with the way the teams run offenses now.
Yeah, and especially the way the Browns want to play as well. Dan Labbe and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the Patriots game. We'll also take a look at what the Browns have been doing as far as takeaways go. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns, getting ready for the Patriots, looking back at the Bengals win. So the Browns had 3 takeaways, didn't turn the ball over at all, +3. Put that in perspective, they had 5 takeaways going into the game, so they almost doubled it. Kevin Stefanski talked about the turnovers and being aggressive in that secondary.
Yeah, complimentary ball is a big deal. You know, that's one of the disappointments from yesterday is getting 2 turnovers and turning those into 6 points, settling for field goals. That's not good enough, and that's something that we need to do better. And that's where, you know, we're going to be counting on our defense to get those takeaways week in and week out. And when they do, we got to convert them into 7s. I think that's how we want to play, Tony. Obviously, game to game, you have certain adjustments and certain coverages that you're going to play a little bit more of, but we want to be aggressive really in our zone coverage. We want to be aggressive in our man coverage. So when the guys have one-on-one opportunities, we want them to deny their man the ball. That's the simple way of putting it. We want our guy to take their guy out of the play. So I think you saw that, but to say that was different than this season, I think our guys understand that they have to play aggressive. You have to, when the time calls for it, when the defense calls for it, you have to go deny your man the ball.
Dan Labbe, it sure seemed like the secondary was a whole lot tighter on the Bengals receiver than we had seen pretty much all season.
I thought so too. And like I mentioned earlier, I was worried about, we're 3 weeks removed from when it felt like they just decided not to cover DeAndre Hopkins. To see them just pasted to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all of these weapons that the Bengals have was a really encouraging sign. And I don't know if it was game plan specific or if this is something that we're going to see more and more as the season goes along. I thought they were aggressive against Pittsburgh too. And I thought there were some tighter window throws there. There were a couple breakdowns, but I think we've seen this defense be a little more aggressive. And what you like with the turnovers that we saw is sometimes turnovers can be luck, but I felt like all three of those turnovers were aggression. It was Denzel Ward jumping in front of the ball. It was John Johnson stripping the ball. And then it was opportunistic. It was an opportunistic play by Johnson.
Kind of bred and broke he knew the play that was coming and he defended it perfectly on the 99-yard interception return for a touchdown. All right, let's turn our attention to the Patriots. Patriots 5-4, just like the Browns. Both teams kind of in the middle of the AFC. In those terms, this is a huge game. Again, it's, I know Kevin Stefanski keeps saying the biggest game is this week's game, but it really is when you're playing teams that have similar records to you, like the Patriots and Browns, both 5-4.
Yeah, this season, this is the longest season in NFL history, right? And now we're going in, this is the end of week 9 here, and there's still a bunch of games left, but the season gets short fast. And that loss to the Steelers, I think, was a reminder. Like, you can't afford to lose games like that because it puts you behind the 8 ball. And like I said earlier, you've got an opportunity now to play all the teams that you're going to be jostling with for position. And the Patriots are a weird team. It's almost like if we were the college football playoff committee judging them, we talk about how great some of their losses are. They've lost to really good teams, but then we'd maybe be unimpressed with some of their wins outside of when they beat the Chargers a few weeks ago. So this is, again, Bill Belichick. He's going to be prepared for this Browns team like he always is. Josh McDaniels is really good on that offensive side of the ball. Mac Jones has been playing better. I like that defense, but there's no reason the Browns should be scared of the Patriots or scared of going into Foxborough. They should be playing a confident football game. And this is just another big one, and we're going to be saying that a lot here over these last few weeks.
So the MO of Bill Belichick is always he takes away what the other offense does really well. If he takes away what the Browns do really well, he's going to try to take away Nick Chubb. How do the Browns deal with that if he does, do you think?
I don't think they're going to shy away from trying to run the football. Nick Chubb has faced 8-man boxes and he's faced loaded boxes and he's been successful against it. I think they're going to test that defense out and they're going to try and run at them. But you know what? This might be a game where, okay, Baker, you played really well against the Bengals. You were really efficient. You made great throws. Now we need you to just go win us this football game against New England because they're going to take away Nick Chubb. Now, if they could get Kareem Hunt back this week, that would be great. I don't know if it's going to happen. Right now, before we really find out what his status is on Wednesday, I'd be a little bit pessimistic about him being ready to go against the Patriots. But, I think they'll test that run game. They'll let this offensive line be who they are, and they'll let Nick Chubb be who he is. But if Baker has to go win a football game, I think Sunday goes a long way to this coaching staff kind of trusting that shoulder again, trusting how he's playing in this offense again. I think they have the confidence sort of back in what they can do in the passing game.
The other thing is Mac Jones is a rookie quarterback and not the most mobile. So, again, you would think Jadeveon Clowney, the Maliks, Myles Garrett, go get them.
Yeah, this is a game made for those guys. They're going to really test that Patriots offensive line because, Joe Burrow can get away, right? Joe Burrow is very mobile. He moves well in the pocket. I heard someone actually kind of compare his mobility in the pocket to another Patriots quarterback of days past. He's able to kind of maneuver around in the pocket a little bit. He's a little quicker than Tom used to be with the Patriots. But, Mac Jones doesn't quite have that yet. So he's kind of a sitting duck there for Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, and you get that pressure up the middle, which is something Malik McDowell has been so good at. If you can move him off his spot, this could be another opportunity for Myles Garrett to maybe get a strip sack or two.
How do you see this one playing out? What do you think the keys are if the Browns are going to go and get a much-needed win in Foxborough?
I'm curious to see how both teams kind of control the football. Bill Belichick has never been afraid, him and Josh McDaniels, to put together long drives and make a defense stay on the field. And Kevin Stefanski is sort of the master of that as well. He doesn't mind putting together a 6, 7, 8-minute drive. So, I don't want to jinx it, but this might be a 2.5-hour game on Sunday if both these coaches kind of have their own way. But, I've been wrong the last couple of weeks about the Browns. I thought they would beat the Steelers. I was a little concerned about this Bengals game. So I've sort of lost my feel for this team after getting off to a good start. But, I'm confident that what they did against Cincinnati, they can continue to do that against the Patriots. And I think this defense gives you reason to believe they can go win that game.
Yeah, I think this is an offense that the Browns defense should be very aggressive against because there isn't the huge explosion, the type of explosive player that you fear would make you pay for being aggressive. I agree with you. Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Dan.
Yep, anytime.
All right, Dan Labbe, make sure you read them, page of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast will join us. We continue talking Browns. Kevin Stefanski talks about cleaning up the penalties. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Earlier in our show, our voicemail of Truth and Reason mentioned the penalties that the Browns had, the self-inflicted wounds, if you will. 10 penalties yesterday for 84 yards. For the season, Browns have 64 penalties, third most in the NFL. It has cost them 602 penalty yards. That is most in the NFL. Those numbers, Kevin Stefanski is aware of them.
Yeah, those are disappointing. We are not a disciplined football team right now when it comes to penalties, and we got to get it fixed. We're, I believe, very close to being worse in the league, and that's an undisciplined team. That's what losing looks like. So we have to clean that up because it's going to come back and bite you if we don't.
Let's welcome in Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. And Kevin, you hear that? And first thing to getting it corrected is admitting that you have to correct it.
That's always the first step. You got to admit there's a problem first, and then you can kind of work your way from there to getting things corrected. Now, this team is 5-4, and we talked last week about how they were average, slightly above average right now. I don't know how this team can get back to being the disciplined team that Kevin Stefanski is so used to and what he established last year. But it has got to stop, or else we're just going to keep going down this road of, well, we win a game, we lose a game, we win a game, we lose a game, and you're just going to remain average all season long. If you want to take that next step, take that step towards the playoffs and then contending again, getting back to the team that we all thought they were supposed to be, and kind of a team that we actually saw yesterday against the Bengals, a desperate team, a team that was supposed to go out there, score a lot of points, play strong defense. You had a healthy secondary yesterday. You got to cut out the penalties because that's the difference between winning and losing. Those 3 or 4 plays that everybody says is so important in the NFL, those can come down to turnovers or penalties. And when you have those costly penalties that help a team on a drive or get your offense off the field sooner and put them behind the chains, that much more difficult to get any sort of rhythm as a team.
Yeah, and that first drive was extended by a penalty where you lined up offsides. Now, it worked out okay because Denzel Ward bailed you out with a pick six that went 99 yards the other way. Let's take a look at the highest graded Browns Pro Football Focus for yesterday's game. And you want to see this. A lot in the 90s and near 90s. Wyatt Teller, we'll talk about him in a little bit. Denzel Ward, we've talked about. He was outstanding. Donovan Peoples-Jones, that 60-yard touchdown catch. Baker Mayfield, one of the highest quarterback rankings for Pro Football Focus through 9 weeks. And John Johnson at 85.8. When you look at that, Kevin, Wyatt Teller has been putting together solid weeks back-to-back, and started out a little slow. On that 70-yard touchdown run, I'm sure you've seen the block. It looks like something out of the WWE, but it legally, where he is launching himself and knocking people on the ground.
I mean, if it's all within the confines of the NFL, you're not doing anything beyond the rules, by all means, get that block in there. He's sacrificing for the team. He's trying to open up the hole and help Nick Chubb get to the river, as the eloquent play-by-play voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, said yesterday. And, I mean, you saw several pancake blocks from Wyatt Teller yesterday. And, yeah, he's getting back to the guy that a lot of us, we brought up the conversation this offseason about who should get these contract extensions. Nick Chubb got his. There's Denzel Ward. Of course, Baker Mayfield, but the fourth guy was Wyatt Teller. How important is it to keep this line together as long as possible, or keep some of the young stars or young good pieces on this offensive line together, especially if you're going to have Baker Mayfield and this young wide receiving core and skill set on this team moving forward. If you want to continue to contend and not have to deal with all of these teams that, they contend for a couple of years and then they run into the business side of the NFL. If you don't want to have that, can you pay everybody? Tampa Bay showed that you can, but they're kind of the exception to the rule right now. They're the only one. So Wyatt Teller has been an integral piece for this offensive line, and getting back to that 2020 form that was so big in the run game and the pass game. And when this offensive line is rolling, you already know Nick Chubb is going to be second level before linebackers or safeties even have a chance to realize he's past them.
So Donovan Peoples-Jones, the 60-yard touchdown catch, he has really, anytime the Browns go to him, he seems to answer. There seems to be a little bit of a chemistry between he and Baker Mayfield. Here's Donovan Peoples-Jones on that subject.
I just go out there and try to do, my 1 of 11 each play. Trying to make a play for the team. I always want to make a play for the team. So, every time it comes to me, I want to make that play. And, I try to hold myself to that standard. So, anytime he, gives me a chance, I want to, give the team a chance and make that play.
And what about Coach calling you Mr. Dependable? I think you're starting to get a little bit of a nickname out of the deal.
Oh, man, that's a great honor. It's a great honor.
And Kevin, when Kevin Stefanski mentions him, he always says, everything we give him, he seems to answer, and you know, he never disappoints when we ask him to do something.
That's the kind of guys you want in this receiving core for a team that, you know, we all know now kind of what this receiving core is going to look like or how they're going to spread the ball around. 8 guys, 8 different receivers caught a pass from Baker Mayfield yesterday, spreading it around. Donovan Peoples-Jones only made 2 catches yesterday. And we kind of talked about him earlier in the season as well, where he was only targeted a few times in a game, but he made all those attempts, or most of them. He made the most of that opportunity, because when the play is called for him or he has the ability to be a second or third option and he's open, he's going to make the play for the team, whether on third down or that big call up over the top for the 60-yard touchdown yesterday. Donovan Peoples-Jones is, you know, a 6th-round pick that probably got pushed aside at Michigan, or just at least talents weren't allowed to be put on full display as much as I know he would have liked, and probably Michigan overall would have liked to have seen from a talented guy like Peoples-Jones. But you're starting to see why he is a steal in the 6th round, and why this team kind of, you know, they rally around him, and he's a younger Jarvis Landry. When Jarvis Landry gets the ball, most of the time you're going to expect him to catch it. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's getting that same reputation, and that is so vital to have that depth in this receiver room.
Yep, and he's going to get more opportunities, and he's a big target for Baker Mayfield as well. ESPN Stats and Info tweets this out. The Browns, 4th team in NFL history to record a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, and defensive touchdown of 60-plus yards in the same game. It was the 1966 Chiefs, the 1966 Washington, they say football team, they were the Redskins back then, and the 1967 Chargers. That is how rare having both the long pass play, the long run play, and a defensive touchdown that is plus 60 yards is. And you know what? Alex Van Pelt and the Browns have talked about explosive plays. They got them all at once. They need to put a couple of those and save them for the upcoming weeks, because Browns, when they get those explosive plays, they're tough to beat.
Well, ESPN Stats and Info shows you how rare something like that is, to do all of those big plays all in one. But we've been looking for explosiveness from this team for a while now. Until week 9, we really hadn't seen much of it. And, you know, you're not going to probably see the 60-plus yard or multiple ones in games, but this should build some confidence that they can have explosive plays, the 40, the 50-yard throws down the field or runs down the field. They can open up those types of elements of their offense, so it's not just seen as dink and dunk or just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers and let them go. Because if a defense knows they can keep everything in front of them, it makes it easier. We saw that in the Chiefs playoff game, how they just kept everything in front of them. If you have the ability to take the top off the defense, or at least build some explosiveness into your offense, now defenses have to second guess, and they can't just play with everything in front of them. They have to know, hey, we can't let anything behind us either. So now you have a little bit more wiggle room to play with in that playbook.
Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast and I going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll look at the Pro Football Focus all-week team and the team of the week. A couple of Browns, 3 Browns on it. We will also look ahead to the Patriots. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Browns celebrating a good win against the Cincinnati Bengals, much needed. Now they'll look ahead to the Patriots coming up Sunday. Pro Football Focus Team of the Week, and rightly so. Browns all over it. On offense, the quarterback, Baker Mayfield, one of the top grades through 9 weeks of this season. And Wyatt Teller, Also, the right guard. You look over on the defensive side of the ball, and would you expect anything but Denzel Ward to be on there as one of the cornerbacks? Had an outstanding game to Denzel Ward, 0.0 quarterback rating against the QBR rating, just one reception allowed for 11 yards against a really talented wide receiving core. Greedy Williams, day-to-day with the shoulder. Kevin Stefanski didn't know a whole lot more than he knew after the game when he addressed the media. We'll find out more about him coming up Wednesday. So Kevin Arnold, Greedy Williams had been playing really well, but you have to like what you have in Ward and Newsome and that depth in that secondary.
And you can throw in Troy Hill on that as well, because you look at him. I think he set a record yesterday for the Browns, a team record in terms of most sacks in a game from a defensive back for the Browns yesterday, with 3 of them. So now you can move him around a little bit. There is some depth in that room. Of course, you want to send all your best out to Greedy. Anytime you hear that he's dealing with a shoulder injury, for what he had to go through to get back on the field with the nerve damage and just kind of going through all of that to get back on the field this year, you just hope for the best. You just hope, it's something minor that he can kind of get through. Maybe it's a week or so, but, like you said, we'll find out more. But this is probably the most healthy that the defensive back room has been, and you're seeing exactly what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and even Joe Woods had planned once they kind of put these pieces together with John Johnson, Troy Hill, and that entire secondary that they already had in place. And if they can continue to get the turnovers, hopefully this week of turnovers we just had kind of is like a snowball effect in a good way in terms of getting that ball rolling and getting back to even or above even in the turnover ratio.
Yeah, much needed turnovers, and the secondary really stepped up and played well. All right, let's look ahead and talk a little bit about the Patriots. When you look at them, what are some areas that concern you, and what do you think the Browns need to do as you look at the Patriots? Obviously an important game. Both teams 5-4. Patriots actually have the tiebreaker over the Browns because they're 4-1 in the AFC. Browns are 3-3. But removing all that, when you look at the Patriots, what concerns you? What do you think the Browns can exploit? What can they do?
You and Dan Labbe talked about it, how Bill Belichick is known for taking away what you do best. Now, the Browns are not going to shy away from the run because that is what they do best. And, they're kind of waiting. They will test you and test your defensive front, test your defense. What concerns me the most is that defense for the Patriots and how well they're playing. I know that Sam Darnold probably going back more so to his New York Jets days yesterday than kind of the hot start that he got off to in Carolina with that fresh start down there. But this defense has been flying around, and just listening to some of these pregame shows and seeing some of their games, that's kind of been what they've relied on. Defense, run game, and not have Mac Jones, their rookie quarterback, do too much. So if the Browns can kind of keep that defense off kilter, kind of as they go through their film this week, see what they like to do best, kind of how they may take away your run or how they take away certain plays from your offense and keep them off kilter, maybe with a little bit of confidence in that offensive team meeting room and with the explosive plays, maybe there are some elements of the playbook you can sprinkle in that you haven't really put on film this year. And then that keeps them on their heels, keeps them honest, and you can get back to what you do best, which is running the football. And I know Nick Chubb wants to get back there to New England to have a better game than he had the last time with those uncharacteristic fumbles, the last time the Browns faced the Patriots.
Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Kevin, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you always to you guys, and happy Victory Monday.
All right, Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer, and Chris Fedor, Cleveland Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. That is tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on Sports for CLE. We will see you then. Have a great night, everybody.